So creating a circle of support as we age is our next topic. And we're lucky to have Mindy Goldberg and Brenda Shorkend joining us today to engage us in this discussion. Let me tell you a little bit about each of them. Mindy has 33 years of experience in social work and primarily serving elderly citizens. She also teaches continuing education for healthcare and social work professionals and is a social work consultant. She's a licensed clinical social worker, a member of the Academy of Social Workers, National Association of Social Workers, and she has been a case manager at Complete Probate Administration for over 17 years. She was educated at UCLA, where she obtained her Master of Social Welfare. And Brenda Shorkend is a certified aging life care manager and geriatric care manager who has over 25 years of experience working with older people and people with special needs and disabilities and their families. And she has a background in rehabilitation psychology and is a member of the Aging Life Care Association. She's worked in a variety of hospital and community settings and has a broad knowledge of local resources and services. And she was trained at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in psychology and English, and got a master's degree from Bar Ilan University in rehabilitation psychology. So Mindy and Brenda, we welcome you and look forward to hearing from you about this topic. So with that, take it away. By the way, I encourage everybody to use your speaker view so you'll be able to see either Mindy or Brenda when they're speaking. And if you have comments or questions, type them in the chat room. I'll be monitoring it and I'll be able to call on you. And it sounds like Mindy and Brenda are open to taking comments and questions in the middle of their presentation. So feel free to type in or raise your hand and I'll call on you. Mindy and Brenda, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I think what we'd like to start with, if we can, it's quite a big group. So if we can just go around quickly, everybody give us your name and maybe 1 or 2 words about any concerns you might have or questions, but do it quite quickly because we don't want to spend all the time on going around the group. So I'm just looking at the screen and I see Barbara Sampson. Can you unmute, Barbara?
There we are. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm a visitor from to Valley Vest Shalom from Stephen Wise Temple, and I like your program. And I'm interested in transportation. Driving at night especially is difficult for me, and I know I'll be needing transportation during the day too. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, I know that you're part of the team at VBS. Is there something that you would like to bring up as a concern? Eileen?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Well, as you know me, Mindy and I have been colleagues for many years. And I was concerned about educating our community on what services are available should they have some changes in their lives or the lives of members of their families. And I always found that there's never enough education. So that would be my request.
Thank you. Carolyn? Are you able to unmute?
These people asking questions or what?
I didn't have any comment.
Okay, yeah. Mary, that's okay. Mary, you're not Mary, but it says Marv. Mary Leon. Who is that? Oh, Marv.
Oh, it's Marv. It's a gentleman.
Marv. I can't even see properly today. Marv, do you have any questions?
What? Yeah.
Marv, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Gerald?
Member of this congregation for 65 years.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
am growing older and concerned mainly about losing mobility.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big issue. Yeah.
Harder to walk, harder to get out of unhard chairs, still driving, but in a circumscribed area. And those are things that concern me at the moment.
Gerald?
I have no questions, but thank you.
Okay. Diane?
How do I tell my niece that this is not a good time to visit me? She's coming from Minnesota.
Tell her not to come. I know it's not that. That's not so easy. Yeah, that's an interesting question. We'll see if we can get to that. You can always get someone else to tell her. That's all. Rosalind? Okay, Rosalind?
I have a friend who is wheel-bound, Chair, and cannot find suitable housing, affordable housing as a senior. Is there some place that I could suggest she go?
Okay. Leo? Leo, can you unmute?
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Do you have
I did not raise my hand.
Do you have any questions or concerns?
No.
Okay.
Not so far.
Helen?
Helen Adelberg. Yeah, I just want to hear what you have to say. No specific questions. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Louise? I don't see Louise. Okay, maybe we'll come back to her. Helen?
What was that, another Helen?
Helen Dosick, you're the second Helen, aren't you? Or we already spoken to you? Look at me, I'm getting...
Yes, no, thank you. I'm just looking forward to your presentation.
Okay. Carol Morrison?
I'm looking forward to whatever you have to say, but I'm always interested in knowing what resources are available.
Lauren?
We're fortunate. We're blessed. We have no questions, and we're good to go.
Sally?
No questions.
Marilyn?
I think it's already been asked, and that's how do you find decent assistance, particularly in COVID?
What kind of assistance are you talking about?
Just even if you, I mean, my back went out, I'm doing great now, but I needed somebody to drive me and those kinds of things. So even how do you find those people? I was lucky, I had a resource, but how do you find them, particularly in the time of COVID?
Sure. Phyllis?
I'm just interested in availability for for driving, having helping us. Yeah, I understand there's multiple ways of getting someone to help.
Do you have two machines open at the same time there? Because we're getting feedback from you. Yeah. So you should check. Okay, where did I get to? Bill?
Nothing specific at this moment.
The people who aren't showing their faces, I assume they're here. Alan? Okay, I'm going to leave the people whose faces I can't see. If you have any specific questions, put them in the chat for us, please. Mindy, should we just skip introducing who we are, because I think Joel did an excellent job?
Well, no, let me add just one thing that Joel did not mention. Thank you, though, for the good introduction, Joel. I was crazy enough to start my career with adolescents when I graduated. And during the course of my career, I worked in med-surg hospitals, and most of the patients were elderly. And so I became very acquainted with issues of aging, and I found I liked working with older people. Now I'm one of you, so I'm working. I'm also looking for myself and having to adapt. the point I wanted to make was that I've been working in this field for about 30 years, and most of it I've spent working with professional conservators, also known as fiduciaries. And some of you may or may not be acquainted with conservators, but most of our clients are older adults, and very often, mostly with some type or form of dementia, and needing the protection of a conservator as well as the services. Just recently, I've started working with private cases, but very limited. So I just wanted to mention that because every professional conservator should provide geriatric care management as well.
And I'll go a little bit later. I'll talk about the documents that you need so that you can prevent the need for a conservatorship, because that's the very last, most restrictive way of making sure that a person is safe, that we all want to avoid if at all possible. But we'll talk about a little bit about that later. Anything else you want to add, Mindy, before I go on?
No, okay. Let's just go.
Okay, so I wanted to start very briefly about the national association that Mindy and I belong to. It's called the Aging Life Care Association, and all the members are people who have training and supervision, mostly working with older people with chronic medical issues and dementia, but there are people with lots of different backgrounds, and Mindy will go on into that in a minute. What's nice about the association is you can go on the website and find people like ourselves by zip code. So if you need help from someone and you don't live here in Studio City, but you live in Ohio somewhere, you can go on the website and find help. And of course, you can always contact either me or Mindy to find a good referral for you. Our national association makes sure that we all have a level of professionalism and accountability, and we have a code of ethics similar to social workers and psychologists, and it really means that you're working with a person who is going to advocate for you. I think what is unique about care management, and again Mindy will go into that a little bit in a minute, is that you pay us for our services and we advocate for you. We're not being paid by anyone else, and we will make sure that we're working with you to protect you and support you. Mindy.
Okay. Care managers, actually, I thought you were going to address that, Brenda, but I'll go ahead and do that. Care managers, geriatric care managers come from a number of different disciplines. And for some people, it's more comfortable perhaps to work with one than another. But many care managers are in the nursing profession. They can be RNs or nurse practitioners. Many are social workers like myself or like Brenda, who has a background in psychology and rehabilitation. Occupational therapists also, physical therapists also have become geriatric care managers. And
gerontologists, of course.
And gerontologists, how can I forget them, of course. Yeah, and gerontologists. And even some universities are even offering courses. I mean, USC has a degree in gerontology, but they also offer, I believe, a degree in geriatric care management. So, and it's really important that they be a member of the professional association, because there are ethical standards and there are tests that you have to pass, etc., so that you're getting somebody with a good professional background and good ethics as well. I say that because it's not uncommon, and I don't mean to, I'm not maligning my own profession, but it's not uncommon for facilities to offer, what would you call them, fees to people who place people there, that kind of thing. It's not uncommon at all. And shocking, but not uncommon. And a true professional obviously is not going to accept that. That's not why we choose a place or recommend a place. It's based again on the client's needs. So care management is basically, it's a problem-solving approach. It's holistic, it's dynamic. You're never solved. It's always, what's the problem? What can we do to alleviate it? And is it working? Okay, and very often it isn't working, or new things entered into the thing, a new medical diagnosis, a new issue with depression or anxiety or whatever it is, and the solution is no longer working. So we have to rework what the problem is and what is the new problem and how do we go about addressing it. One of the things I want to stress that Brenda and I talk about all the time is that even if you place your best friend, your neighbor, your loved one in for example, an assisted living like, well, we all live in the Valley. So I'm going to say Atria or Belmont or Sunrise. I don't know, we have tons of stuff in the San Fernando Valley. Don't assume everything is fine. Do not ever assume wherever your loved one, your friend is, whomever in a facility that everything is just fine. It is not the case at all. And it's not that the people aren't good or well-meaning or wanting to do a good job. The reality is that there are no standards for staffing in an assisted living. An assisted living would be of this place like Atria or Sunrise or even the Village, I believe, has an assisted living component. Don't assume everything is fine. You have to monitor your own person and make sure that, unless they can speak that well for themselves, and even then, I would keep an eye on them. I recently had a situation that I was referred to by a conservator in Orange County, and this person is living at a well-known, well-respected facility, and the staffing and the observations were such that when I became involved, one of the first things I did was have them weigh her. And I learned that since admission, which was only like 7 or 8 months, she had lost 23 pounds. Whoa. And nobody noticed it. I'm serious. I know it sounds awful, but it's true. And the reason is because she had very advanced dementia, and very often people with advanced dementia are very restless. They want to be on the move all the time. They're going, they're not sitting down, and in order to eat, you sit down and eat, right? So we immediately set up a different type of program to make sure she fed. She's regained the weight. But I bring that up only because this is a well-known and respected place, but nobody said, and there was also no doctor coming to see her because there was a transition from one conservative to another. And the facility did not take the initiative to look at these problems and to notice that they did notice she wasn't eating, but they didn't bother weighing her. Okay, so I only bring that up to make the point again and again that you have to keep monitoring, even in a well-respected place.
And what Mindy is omitting to say, the person who does the monitoring can be a family member, but can be a care manager.
Yeah, either one, it doesn't matter. In this case, the lady is one of my solo agers who has nobody. Okay, and she has family that are in New York State, New York City, I don't know where. But there's nobody local that comes to see her to say, gee, she looks thin. You know, so it could be a family member. It doesn't have to be a care manager, but you have to advocate for your friend, your person, your family member continuously. Don't make assumptions that everything is all right, because it may not be. Basically, care managers, again, depending on, regardless of their background, whether they're an RN, whether they're an MSW, whether they're an occupational therapist, by the professional association, they're expected to have knowledge in a number of areas. For example, health and disability, end-of-life care, planning for the future, financial benefit programs, housing and relocation, family issues, local resources, advocacy, legal, and crisis intervention. These are all areas that we are expected to have some knowledge about. And I will admit there are some I know better than others, truthfully. And so if I don't know something, it's beholden on me to learn about it or to find the resource for it and educate myself so I can serve the client better. Brenda, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah. I'd also add, I think it's really important that we work with people at many, many stages in their lives. We can help people who are young. And for me, young is anywhere from 60 to 90, as long as they're independent. And we can help them think about where they're going what they're going to be doing with their lives in the future. We can work in the middle of a crisis when someone is being held hostage by a hospital, being thrown out by a nursing home, or a situation like Mindy was talking about where they're not getting proper care. So there is a huge range of issues that we can deal with. And we are always emphasizing independence and quality of life. But making sure that a person is as safe as they can be. So it is that balance. And we work a lot with adult children to calm them down and make sure that the parents are having a good life. And it'll sometimes be with the spouse or the friend. So there's a whole range of ways that we can intervene working with a family. Something that is a whole presentation, and if you haven't had it yet, Joel, I think it's really important, is the whole issue of legal documents, trust, will, powers of attorney, the post. I mean, this is a 2-hour lecture, but it's very, very important. If you want to make sure that your wishes for the future are being carried out the way you want it to be, then you need to have people on you need to have the documents, and you need people on the documents that you trust, so they can step in and be your voice for you. And that is where we can work in partnership with your people to make sure that you get what you want and not what your evil cousin wants. And there are lots of bad issues, like people trying to steal money and dumping people in assisted living, but there's also where family members want the authority to make decisions and don't have it, or don't know what you want. Oh, you're on my document. My daughter's on my document. Yes, I never spoke to her. I never had a conversation. So part of building this circle of care is obviously your professional team, your estate planner, your CPA, your financial advisor, your doctor, all these different people. But if your family members, your spouse or your children are involved, make sure they know what you want, because so many, at least let them know you're on they're on your documents, because many people that I know have had a call from a hospital. Hey, you're on the documents for this aunt. Well, I haven't spoken to the aunt in 10 years. I have no idea what she wants. And yet now I'm at a point where I have to make decisions. So this is something that I think both Mindy and I are very passionate about. When you get really stuck, you can always have a conservatorship, but that is the absolute last stage. And I would hope not to ever need that. We want to just give a few brief vignettes and then leave time to talk. I know that, I heard in your questions that the whole issue of transportation and housing, those are the two big ones. And we'll try and talk about those later. But I always say, if I had a magic wand, I wouldn't be a care manager. I'd be doing really well. So I'm going to give two little stories about clients that I've had. One couple, it was really interesting. They came to me, they thought they were coming to me because they were thinking of building a unit behind their house for a caregiver. And they were basically debating about whether to stay home and build this unit for a caregiver or whether to move into a retirement community. And that's what they thought they were talking to me about. And they were both in their late 70s, comfortably off, very organized, lots of advisors. But then we sit down and we start talking, and I ask them, well, what about your kids? Oh, my son's fine. He's launched. He's living wherever with his partner. My daughter's okay now. So what do you mean okay now? So then I start ferreting things out just by asking, just by having a conversation. Somehow this is information that never got to the attorney, never got to the financial advisor. So they didn't know that there was an adult son in his 30s who had chronic addiction issues, who was not on drugs right now, had been clean for 6 months, but they were still supporting him. Did I say him or her? And I've muddled up what am I saying about? Did I say him or her? Doesn't matter. Let's say the son. So I said to them, well, how are you managing this? Oh, we're just going to stop supporting him in January. And I said, well, I think you need to think about this really carefully. And you don't want your daughter to be the one who's going to be responsible for your son when you pass. Plus, these are the situations, and we all have people like these in our family, that for whatever reason, they're struggling with becoming independent. And if we don't provide for them there may be a point that, not on purpose, they will be basically abusing their parents. Again, not on purpose. But as the parents get older, as the parents have less grip on their finances, the son or daughter can continue asking for money or having a new car bought, and the parents might now be spending too much money on this adult child than they can afford. So it's very, very important to be open with your advisors, to talk to your estate planning attorney. These are the black sheep, these are the skeletons in the family, to set it up. And so I sent them back to their estate planner, to their financial advisor, to make sure that A, their daughter would not be the one holding the purse strings for the son, which I think is an awful thing to ask from your adult children, and B, that going forward from now, there would be some kind of structure in place to support this man. So that's one kind of client that I get. Another kind of client, in a way very similar to Mindy's client, this was a man with dementia who'd been in a very high-end memory care unit for quite a long time. His wife had died, his daughter was doing her best, but somehow this place was neglecting him. He was in bed or he was in the wheelchair, and yeah, he was cleanish, he was fed, but there really wasn't much interaction with him. And slowly over time, and luckily this was a family with a lot of money, we brought in caregivers, occupational therapists, different kinds of interactions. We trained the caregivers on how to interact with him, and he regained a lot of quality to his life. But what I have to emphasize, the best thing we did for him, which is the cheapest, his bed had been facing the wall. We simply moved it so he could face the window. Now that doesn't cost any money. You just have to be strong enough to push a bed. So not all the solutions for people cost money. Some of them are just being creative, putting up a photo of the grandchildren, having enough light in the room. It can be very simple things to help people. So those are my two little stories. Mindy, do you want to give your little stories and then we'll open up for questions?
Sure. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we now call solo agers. Before they used to be referred to as elder orphans, and I guess that seemed, I don't know, anyway, it seemed demeaning or somehow unacceptable. And so now the new fancy term is solo agers. And these are people like the couple I'm going to be talking to you about, who never married, but even if you did marry, a spouse can die before you. So there you are without them. Don't have children, not a great, well, in the case of the gentleman I'm going to talk to you about, not a great social circle, so that there's a lot of support out there for him, you know, morally, emotionally, or any other way. And this is becoming a major concern for those of us in this profession. I do want to mention, although we want to avoid conservatorship where we can, most conservators are also known as fiduciaries, and fiduciaries can be used to do what's called a pre-need setup for management of a trust or healthcare agent prior to becoming incapacitated, for many people who are solo agers who cannot find somebody to act in that capacity for them. One of the problems is you have to find somebody significantly younger than you are. You know, if I ask one of my friends who's my age, you know, she might die before me, I might die before her, who knows? So I finally reached the point where I trust my children to do the right thing. So I've nominated my children. I've had to go through this thinking process myself. Anyway, I wanted to bring up one story that I wanted to bring up, was a gentleman that, in fact, to tell you the truth, I've been working on this morning and will be working on when I get off the television with you guys, when I get off the Zoom. And this is a fellow known, I'm going to call him Marvin. Marvin is an 87-year-old guy. He's a retired accountant. He never married. He lived with his brother, who passed away a few years ago, who was a physics teacher. The two guys lived together. Neither of them married, or apparently had very extensive social circles. And They both obviously retired. He's 87. And he lived alone in an apartment in the west end of the valley. And I met him about 6 years ago when he set up the pre-need, designating my employer, the fiduciary, to be his trustee and to manage his health care, et cetera. I met him at that time. And then I met him again this past summer. He had an accident with his car. In the parking lot of his apartment building, he hit 5 cars that were, no one was in there. There were no physical injuries, but he damaged 5 cars that he hit, as well as damaging the fence of the place, of the apartment complex where he lived. And this so shook him up that he readily agreed not to drive anymore. And he was amenable. He called my office for help, obviously. And he was amenable to considering alternate living arrangements. He was not doing very well in the apartment by himself. It was from, a safety point of view. He's a very bright guy. He would spend most of his time during the day looking at his stocks and investments. That was very important to him. And also watching CNN or other news channels and keeping up on what's going on in the world, but pretty isolated. I think he pretty much only went out to go to the grocery store and back. He did agree, by the way, to stop driving, which seemed like a good thing to do. But Marvin, bless his heart, is a very frugal man. And Marvin had probably the worst car insurance possible, enough to pass to get his license and to pass the state requirements. And so he was absolutely freaked out by the fact that he could be sued because his insurance would not cover all the repairs of the cars he had damaged. And so what I did for him, among other things, was first get him in touch with an attorney. And so, yes, the attorney will cost a few bucks, but it puts his mind at rest. Melvin's a very kind of frenetic guy who gets very anxious and fearful and, very excitable kind of guy. And so this put his mind at rest because he knew his insurance wasn't going to cover everything. The apartment itself was a total fall risk. He liked getting magazines to read about different diagnoses, and everywhere you walked, you could fall and slip and break your neck. So it was not a very safe apartment. Melvin, at that point, without a car, agreed that he would consider going into into a retirement community. So I arranged for him to meet a professional placement person, and that's what she does. And she introduced him to a number of different places in the west end of the valley where he preferred to live. Anyway, he did move to a nice place, and they appeared to be taking good care of him, but he kept having multiple falls. And I don't know that was ever diagnosed, truthfully, but he did. And most recently, about 2 weeks ago, he ended up in the hospital with aspiration pneumonia. In his case, that occurred because he didn't swallow right. So food was going into his lungs, which causes a pneumonia that we call aspiration pneumonia. And as a result, because of that, he had to end up going to a skilled nursing facility after the hospital stay so that they could work on training his swallow so that he could perhaps return to regular food, even if it was like puree or if it was what we call a soft diet, so that he could leave the nursing home. It's pretty difficult to live anywhere other than a nursing facility with tube feeding. He ended up having to have a tube inserted into his stomach so that he could get nourishment. And obviously, as you might understand, here's an older guy on his own, no one even coming to visit him, and who absolutely was just terrified and frightened, and one, by his condition, and two, by being all alone in a place that he didn't know, with no one around that he did know. I mean, I think any of us would feel, frightened and isolated. So presently, I'm actually actively working with Marvin right now, because one of the problems is he signed up in his effort, in his frugality mode. He signed up for, this is a personal thing, so I'll admit it. he signed up for an HMO instead of signing up for Medicare and a supplemental, which gives you limited control in some ways with your health care. And in his case, I'm about to have a major fight with the HMO because they're limiting him to 14 days of skilled nursing facility care when he's entitled to 100. So we're about to have a fight. So that's part of the advocacy that we have to do. In other words, he has the funds to pay privately, but he's entitled to 100 days, and I'm going to darn well make sure he gets his 100 days. And then what I'll be doing, aside from visiting him a couple of times and bringing him clothes so that they can work with physical therapy with him and so on, and just providing some emotional support. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to be, actually I can. I was hospitalized last year during the pandemic and had no visitors. It was very lonely and it was scary. And I don't know if anybody else has experienced that. So at least he has somebody that knows where he is, that cares what's happening to him, and will make sure that he gets everything that he's entitled to. So that's the advocacy we do and the support. And I will make sure that he ends up, hopefully, God willing, he'll be able to eat again and will end up in a place that he can make his home, that will be his home. So a lot of what we do is not only the problem solving of the immediate problem, which in his case is adequate coverage for his care, and where is he going to go from there, is just also looking to what's a good quality, what's the person's idea of quality of life. I mean, I think that's one of our an important aspect of the work that we do. What makes life worth living for you?
Yeah, what I would add, Mindy, is I think I am really good, as is Mindy, in sorting out all these messes. But what we really enjoy is helping people, at any stage in this journey of getting older, making sure that your life is as reasonable and decent as it can be, and having occasional moments of joy. We don't expect to be happy every day, all day, but to have something to look forward to, or something that I've even had situations where I've had to advocate for a different flavor of Ensure for somebody. They hated strawberry, they love chocolate, so give them chocolate. I've also had a client where the doctor gave a prescription for ice cream. So we do all kinds of things to help people enjoy their lives as much as they can. And I think during COVID, we've all learned how important it is to do a little bit of planning, and as much as possible, make sure that you do have these people around you. Again, whoever they are, professionals, family, friends, to make, and my advice, of course, is always to try and have younger friends. Partly because it's just fun to be around younger people, but also truly from a very sort of tactical, I would say, way of thinking of our lives. When I'm 95, I'd like to have a few friends around, because at 95, it's a little difficult to start making new friends. But if I have a few 60, 70-year-olds, then I'm okay. Mindy, is there anything else you want to add, or should we open to questions?
No, the only other vignette I was going to bring up was, and I'll summarize that even quicker. I didn't mean to spend so much time on Marvin. This is a lady also never married, presently 84. She was referred to me by a family friend who thought she wasn't quite getting along too well. I'll summarize it. It turns out she actually had what we call middle stage dementia. And she was sort of she had excellent social skills. She was able to fake it and stay in her apartment, but was not doing well at all. She was not taking her medication. She wasn't seeing physicians that she should have been. And so the intervention was such that I was able to get her to appropriate physicians for herself. I'm a big believer in gerontologists, I will say that. And I was able to get her to that, and complicated that was a lifelong history of depression and anxiety, which complicates dementia and can make it worse, certainly more severe. So currently, I'm just talking about quality of life. Currently, she agreed to move to an assisted living. That was her choice. And she's never quite adjusted all that well. She's adjusted probably as best as she's going to. in terms of getting into the rhythm of the life there. To some extent she has, to some extent she hasn't. What's her favorite thing to do is go shopping. So I have a caregiver with her several days a week and they go shopping. And what in the end, she may decide, gee, I bought too many pairs of pants, and we go back and bring them back. And that's okay. That's what makes her happy. She had an excellent circle of friends, but they are now, and we do see this, they're seeing her dementia progress, her memory loss progress, and they're pulling away from her. And truthfully, that makes me sad, but it happens. And they're pulling away from her. So the caregiver / companion may be perhaps in the end one of the more stable relationships in her life. But her quality of life is shopping, and that's what she does. And going out to eat, and nice places too, I might add. And so that's what she does. Brenda, I don't know it. I want to add any more to that, but that's basically just the quality of life thing.
Yeah, I think two questions that came up here. One was housing, which is a very complicated, especially affordable housing is a very big issue. Certainly all assisted living homes and board and care homes have to be wheelchair accessible, but they're not cheap. If it comes to housing, I mean, that's a whole separate, low income housing is a whole other conversation. There are resources out there, but not much. Transportation. If you're independent but need help with the transportation or semi-independent, then there's actually this wonderful service called Go Grandparent. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. You connect to Go Grandparent. You don't need a smartphone for it. Someone else can also set it up for you. And they contract with Uber and Lyft. It's not more expensive to you. It's the same price that it would be. But you can call Go Grandparent. They will send you a car and will take you wherever you need. If it's someone who needs more help, then it starts being a problem. Then you probably need to pay somebody to do it responsibly. You should probably go through a licensed home care agency, and they typically have a minimum number of hours. But it is a safe way to get transportation. And I've also found with transportation, if you have a family member who says, well, I don't need help, I don't need a caregiver, I don't need anyone to help me in the house, but I do need someone to help me drive, that can be the foot in the door. Here, I have someone who can drive you. Meanwhile, the person is also doing other things. They're doing some cooking, they're doing some cleaning, they're overseeing the medication maybe, they're just keeping an eye generally on the person. So that can be a way for yourself or for someone else to bring in a little bit more than transportation, but it's not cheap. Mindy, do you have anything more to add before we open up to more questions?
And if you are comfortable with your own cell phone, you could put Uber or Lyft on there yourself.
Of course.
You know, yeah. And I'm trying to think of other access if you're disabled. If you have a disability and using regular transportation, you might qualify for access. And
problem with access, it's one of the most wonderful services because it covers the whole of LA County. You can wait a very, very long time for a drive, even though it is a free, wonderful service. And of course, local areas have dial-a-ride, which is great. But it doesn't always cover as far away as you might need to go. So should we just open to questions then?
Sure.
Yes, so if you have a question or comment, just unmute yourself and I'll recognize that. Or if you want, you can type in the chat room. So let me start off because some of the terminology is a little confusing. Care manager, case manager, geriatric manager, this manager, that manager. What's the difference? Are they the same? And how does it compare to like case or care managers that hospitals or clinics might provide?
Different.
Yeah, they throw these words around all over. Even the caregivers at Sunrise are called care managers. Our National Association changed the name of the association so that rather than calling ourselves geriatric care managers, we're now calling ourselves aging life care professionals or aging life care managers. So it's not so much the name, it's what the person does. Anyone who's a care manager or a case manager from any kind of insurance, health plan, hospital, nursing home, they are first and foremost doing what's in the best interest of the hospital, the health plan, the clinic, the whoever. You know, and sometimes they're called care managers, care coordinators, discharge planners, you know, they have all kinds of names. When you're looking to hire someone like ourselves, that's why we were talking about the association. If you hire someone who's a member of our national association, you are paying us to advocate for you. And that is the big difference. Again, whatever the name of it, if you are an aging life care professional or care manager who is being paid a fee by you, private pay by you, we will do what is best for you. Whereas someone who might be lovely and is at a hospital, they are doing what is right for the hospital. When I worked at Huntington Hospital, I once dared to say to the discharge planner, I really need an extra day for this person in the hospital so we can set up things at home. And she said to me, you never, as an employee of this hospital, you never, ever, ever ask for more time in the hospital. I mean, I shrugged it off. I could care less. What are you going to do? Fire me? But that was the point. I was in conflict with hospital policy because I was advocating for the client, whereas the hospital is advocating for their bottom line, which as long as you take that as it is and don't get upset about it, then you can deal with it. But if you start fighting it, you can get very, very upset. You know, why is the hospital doing this? Why is the nursing home doing that? The person isn't evil. These are the guidelines that they have to follow. So I would say that's the big difference. Not so much the name of what the person, like the title, it's really more who they are and who they're employed by. And of course, there are nonprofits who have wonderful case managers who very much advocate for the clients. I think one resource that maybe it's important to share with everybody, all of us are eligible for free case management through a social services agency, goes by zip code. Where you live, I think it's probably most of you, it's Partners in Care. So I'm guessing, Mindy. I don't know, you probably know this better than I do, but it goes by zip code, and a social worker can come out to your house and help assess your situation. And especially if you're low income, they know every single resource out there, from transportation to meals, to helping you apply for benefits, to just about anything else. Obviously, for someone who has more assets, it makes more sense to work with someone like Mindy or myself, because we can help you with things that are obviously are out of pocket, but can help you with a different level of care.
Can you repeat that again? You said, who's entitled to the social services?
Everybody over the age of, I think, 60, or if you are disabled at any age, you are eligible for what's called case management under a social services agency. These are different nonprofit agencies around LA County, and it's by zip code. So it really depends where you are. And as I said, most of you are probably under Partners in Care. You might be under JFS, you might be under HSA, which is Human Services Association.
Or the Area Agency on Aging. Some of the senior centers offer care management as well.
Yeah, but that is not, it's not always easy to find who the agency is that covers your area. And that's something that obviously I can help you with if you need that.
I think that's the difficult part, is how is the average person, like those of us on this line, to know what's available and who to call?
Well, one really good resource is Huntington Hospital's Resource Center. And even though they're not in the Valley, they are, they're in Pasadena, they can refer you to these different social service agencies, to assisted living waiver program, to Medi-Cal benefits, to Meals on Wheels, all of those things. I'll share their phone number in the chat. Also, if you are in the Glendale, Montrose, La Cañada area, Verdugo Hills Hospital has a wonderful resource center. And again, if you need a resource, email me or call me. I'm happy to send you to connect you with a resource if you get stuck.
And Valley Storefront. Yeah.
Well, they're JFS.
Service Valley Storefront.
They're JFS, yeah.
Yeah, JFS, Jewish Family Services.
But
It's also a
JFS
good
aren't
place.
very good. When you call JFS and you're not in their area, they're not very good at helping you with finding who covers your area. Huntington Hospital are really good at that. They will tell you, oh, you're in Studio City, this is the agency for you to call.
Anyone have any other comments or questions? Just unmute yourself. So we have been aware of, especially during this pandemic situation, of a lot of our members being isolated and not being able to participate, go shopping. Transportation's an issue. And I mean, Helen and Louise are on the line. We've had a telephone call program where we've been reaching out. And since isolation has really become an issue, are there any other things you could recommend for us to consider?
Yeah, there are many programs. There are virtual senior centers, there are virtual programs. I mean, some of them are national, some of them are California. Off the top of my head, right this minute, I don't have names, but I can send them to you. There's a program in New York that's now going all over the country. There's Covier up in San Francisco area that's also going around the whole of California with many different activities and engagement programs to really keep people alive, basically. If you're eligible for Medi-Cal, which I'm sure most of you are not, but you might be, the PACE program pivoted very quickly during COVID to provide a lot of in-home support. It's tough, it really is. Oh, there's also, I'll send you a whole list. I'm just thinking of a whole bunch of things. So I'll just send you a whole list of them. I'm not going to waste time now.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Eileen.
Hi, Eileen.
Unmute. You're not unmuted, Eileen.
The bane of Zoom.
You're still.
Eileen, you're not unmuted.
Daisy?
There you are.
How's that? No? Yes? Okay.
Good.
Oh, now
the city of Los Angeles has, it used to be formerly called InfoLine, which is a resource for the public. And they have resource staff members there that can advise you on a whole range of resources. So in addition, to those that are mentioned by Mindy and Brenda, that's a very quick and accessible way to get information.
There's also a new website, I think it's an LA County website. I'll send that all to whatever I can think of. I'll just put in the email. Any other questions?
Let's see, we had Helen briefly unmute. Does anybody have any other comments or questions? Please just unmute yourself. Helen, go ahead.
Based on teaching gerontology all these years, and also based on some of the phone calls that I've made, people don't change their personalities over time. Someone who tends to be a loner is going to be a loner as they age. And I have found in some of these conversations that I've had with people that those who are very active and were active when they're younger ages are still active today. The issue is, I think, for some who would like to be brought into the 21st century with technology, those that have been willing to do that have really benefited, because then they have the Zoom and I take a class through Encore at Pierce College. Mm-hmm. And there are individuals who, even though there are 100 people on there, they're yelling, I don't know how to do this and I can't do this. And Richard Follett is fantastic. He helps everyone. But I think that based on some of my conversations with people, individuals, especially elders and those who are homebound or isolated, if they somehow can have help in accessing modern technology, their world opens up. And I have found that to be the case in the phone calls that I've made.
Yeah, Helen, there are a bunch of programs. There's one specific company that I'm thinking of where they send the iPad to the home. It's already set up. And then they provide either on the phone or on Zoom training on how to use the goddamn thing.
See, our synagogue has, VBS has done that to an extent. We've sent people out to help. But could you send me the link for that company? That's a great idea.
I mean, everything we're talking about here that I can think of, I'll just put together in an email.
Very good. Very good.
I could send it maybe to Joel and Eileen, and then they can share with you.
And I don't know what's happening because of COVID, Joel, but we did have that Ezra program through Jewish Family Service where we were supposed to have at least one social kind of case manager or social worker or whatever would come to VBS and be this kind of geriatric care manager that we're talking about. I don't know what the status of that Ezra of what's happening, but that's essentially what you're talking about, is that the family service had that Ezra program and we were supposed to be able to access so they could do at least once a week what you do all the time.
I think that would be wonderful, because really most people just need a direction.
Right. I agree.
And certainly if you find the right person to speak to at JFS, they will help you. But good luck getting on the phone to JFS and finding that right person. I think that's part of the problem, is getting to where you're supposed to go so that you get the help that you need, and people give up. It's so hard anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that is the most difficult, but at least even if we had someone once a week who could come and at least manage a certain number of phone calls. So Joel, I'm throwing that back to you.
Yeah, no, to your point, I don't believe anything further has happened with that, mainly because COVID got in the way.
Right, I think that's true.
I think that we should revisit that for sure. You had your hand up again, and then we're almost at the end of our time.
Right. Well, we do have a contact at Jewish Family Service who I have her name and information. I have been in touch with her when the need arises. The Ezra project is a joint partnership between Jewish Family Service and the Federation. And there are specific synagogues in the Valley that have contracted with them. And we are not one of those. So it might be worthwhile to talk to our temple staff about whether that's something that we could benefit from.
Right, we will. And Louise, you may have the last word here.
Okay, I just want to reiterate what Helen had said, because at VBS, we have been so successful in helping those people that we are calling on the war of isolation. There's a gentleman called Hunter who works for VBS, and he gets in touch with them, and I've not had a single complaint from close to 200 people in terms of now being able to use the Zoom and get on to our virtual programming.
Wonderful. So you have some fantastic stuff going on. Joe asked about people who are middle income. I would say it's probably always worthwhile having a meeting with a care manager, even if it's just one consultation. Not necessarily doing a lot for you, because of course that can become very expensive, but having one meeting to just talk through what your situation is, what kind of support you need, and then going forward, navigating things and planning for the future. And obviously with the help of your financial advisor, your estate planning attorney, to make sure that you're moving in the right direction. Certainly my philosophy is don't save too much money now, because you want at least reasonable quality of life. And later on, you might be able to actually get away with care that is not as expensive because your needs will be less. I know it's very paradoxical, but that's kind of how it goes.
Well, I want to thank Mindy and Brenda for this conversation. It's not always comfortable to have these kinds of discussions, but I think it's vital and helpful. And I hope that those of us who heard this were enlightened a bit and at least have a few new ideas about who to contact, how to ask for help, and the like. So thank you very much to both of you for helping us.
Thank you. It was really a joy to speak to you all. And, you know, as we said, if you want to contact us privately, we're available to chat to you and kind of help you move in the right direction. But it sounds as if Eileen is an amazing resource for you.
Yes.